Assessment. Assessment is very important in education as it allows analyzing, evaluating, and reflecting on the result achievement throughout the teaching learning process. Today, there are multiple ways to assess, but this time we are going to explain the difference between formative and summative assessment. The formative assessment. The formative assessment is used to obtain information on the level of understanding that each of the students has achieved throughout the teaching learning process. This information is used to analyze, enrich, plan, and improve education actions so that the intervention is adjusted to the needs of the students so that everyone can reach the maximum level of performance in the different areas of knowledge. The value of formative assessment. The consequence of using formative assessments in education are the teaching learning process is regulated, adapting to the characteristics of the students. But teacher and the student receive feedback on the teaching learning process. The teachers improve their knowledge, their teaching and pedagogical practices. It involves personalized follow-up of each student and recognize it and attends to the different rhythms and ways of learning. Each student is actively involved to achieve certain objectives. That is, they are responsible for their own learning and increases students' academic performance. Some example of the formative assessments are the evaluation rubrics, the observation skills, the tests that measure the initial level, the checklist, and the key questions. Summative assessment. Summative assessment is the one used in traditional teaching. It consists of assessing the level of achievement of the students in relation to the acquired learning and transforming this assessment into grades, which are attributed based on a comparison with the group average. It is about carrying out a final evaluation without taking into account the entire process. To verify the results obtained at the end of the block stage, a lesson or a didactic unit. Pros and cons of summative assessment. The consequences of using summative assessment in education are it is possible to know and certify the level of mastery and knowledge of the students in a specific content. Students know their achievement at the end of the teaching learning process. Students for a final grade, so students study for a final grade, so they tend to push themselves at the last minute. The specific educational needs for each student cannot be identified. The teacher cannot improve their educational actions throughout the process, but must wait to perfect their intervention in the following academic period. Some examples of summative evaluation are the combination of easy and multiple choice questions in a test, oral tests such as expositions or presentations, midterm exams, and the final exams. Here are the difference between formative and summative assessment. The formative assessment helps students to learn and practice through the course, by identifying gaps and improving learning through approaches that support specific students' needs. And in the other sets, the summative assessment assess the student's performance at the end of the instructional period by collecting evidence of a student's knowledge, skill, or proficiency through excess learning products or a cumulative assessment. Um, by way of conclusion, it can be said that formative assessment seeks to assess the entire teaching process, while summative assessment seeks to assess the final result. Therefore, the latter fits into a traditional school model. But currently, there is a new conception related to education. So it's more advisable to use formative assessment tools or instruments. In fact, this type of assessment is ideal for assess skill in education and attend to the diversity of students, taking into account their abilities and personal characteristics.